Welp, the walls are closing in on the Biden campaign. Yesterday, I talked about the emerging narrative that the polls can't be that wrong, and that the only way Trump can win is by cheating. Well, they're in for some a rough time because a poll, a very notable poll by a very well-credentialed pollster, was released, and what it essentially is foreshadowing is a repeat of 2016. Ann Seltzer, who works for, on behalf of the Des Moines Register to produce a public poll of the state of Iowa going into every election, she released a poll that was Trump +7, which is nowhere near all these crazy polls that we've been showing to where Trump is near tied in Iowa or Biden is, slightly ahead. Essentially, the polling averages have showed Trump, pretty much tied with Biden in Iowa, which is, it's hard to believe. Trump won Iowa last time by like 9 points. And if Ann Seltzer's poll is to be taken seriously, which historically it has been taken seriously, then Trump is not going to be tied in Iowa. He's going to do just as well in Iowa as he did in 2016, if not better. Ann Seltzer, I believe, underestimated Trump's lead back then too in her final poll for Iowa. And so the entire election mafia on Twitter has been reeling with this and have been trying to find a way to debunk Ann Seltzer. Dave Wasserman was saying, let's play unskew Seltzer, and old 538 Nate, he's just all over the place. I don't think he knows what to do with himself right now. But he, despite this evidence, and I'll give Nate Cohn some credit for hedging. Nate Cohn, who's the pollster for the New York Times, he tweeted out, an article that was a write-up of the Seltzer poll in Iowa, and, pointed out correctly that in 2016, Seltzer's poll of Iowa, which showed Trump way ahead back then, foreshadowed his sweep across the Rust Belt, because, it's hard to believe that Trump is going to be up 7 points in Iowa, but is somehow losing by 12 points in Wisconsin. These things just don't really mesh together. And if Trump is up that much in Iowa, then you'd imagine that he's doing pretty darn well in Ohio too, which historically Iowa votes to the left of Ohio, but in 2016 Trump actually won Iowa by more than Ohio, which is interesting to think about. And so, let's say that happens again. If Trump is performing about the same in Iowa and Ohio, how is it that Joe has these insurmountable leads in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota? And, well, the reality is that Biden doesn't have these massive leads, and somehow right around the same time as the Seltzer poll, we're starting to see stories coming out, published, which are, sort of insider leaks saying, oh my gosh, the Biden campaign's worried about Pennsylvania now. It's like Seltzer's poll just sort of broke the tension. All the pollsters were herding to the same place, and they were trying to, maintain the narrative that it's impossible for Trump to win. They gave Biden all these massive leads in all these important states, and then Seltzer just comes in and shreds all of that. And yet Nate Silver, who is completely intransigent, maintains, in his analysis that yes, Trump has, like a 15% chance of winning or whatever in our model, and of course that's assuming that there's going to be no election impropriety. We don't account for that, and so everyone after the Seltzer poll came out are citing Nate Silver and saying, look, it's clear that Trump can't win unless he cheats, and so somehow. Even after the Seltzer poll, these people are digging into that narrative even more. And instead, all of these noobs are trying to somehow smear Ann Seltzer, rather than, accept that perhaps she's just publishing her real results and is not skewing them to support any particular narrative about Trump having to steal the election. And I have to say, recently I've seen a couple of other pollsters breaking with the herd to some extent, and trying to give people a hint that, hey, maybe Trump does have a chance. For example, ABC Washington Post, their polls seem to have been not too unreasonable over the last week. And yesterday I saw one that showed, Trump up 2 in Florida, which, should set off alarm bells for these people who somehow still think that Biden is going to easily win Florida, which was never true, and it's certainly not true now. Maybe ABC Washington Post, after seeing everything that's going on in Florida right now, and the fact that the Democrats do not have this insurmountable lead going into Election Day that the polls previously had forecast, they had to essentially adjust their weighting to account for that. And now they're showing Trump up 2, which I think is a very, is very reasonable. I mean, Trump up 2 in Florida would be very, very respectable. That would indicate to me that Trump is going to have a very good night. I mean, I think in 2012 or in 2008, in Obama's big landslide year, he was up like 2.5% in Florida. And of course, if you look at a chart of the RCP average of Arizona polling, it's definitely trending back away from this weird Biden advantage into a Trump was up briefly and is back down because they published another poll that pushed it back Biden's way, but the trend of the lines are clearly back towards even, or if not even, towards a Trump win. He seems to be peaking at the right time in the polls. Of course, that's how maybe media pundits would analyze it, but to me, it seems, I would think that the more likely thing is that it was this close all along, and that, the pollsters maybe are trying to save face. But again, not all of them, because you see Ann Seltzer publishing, what she thinks to be a real result, Trump +7 in Iowa, is getting smeared. Nate Silver's not having any of it. He might just ban her poll from the averages altogether, just like what happened to Richard Barrett. And of course, you have Trafalgar out there, who has had these kinds of numbers for Trump in these states the whole time. He's not just suddenly seeing, oh my gosh, there's a late surge to Trump, and now everything's even everywhere. And Biden's 12-point lead in Wisconsin has evaporated. Trafalgar at least has the integrity to say, no, it's been pretty close this whole time, and you people have just been lying and smearing me for publishing the real results. Now you're publishing, more accurate numbers. And you're saying that my past ones didn't count, and that somehow this, the race has just moved this much, over the last couple weeks. It's just that I just don't buy that. Trafalgar just can't keep getting lucky and, having their fake polls end up being right, for 6 months or for a few months longer before everyone else ends up at the same conclusion. I don't know how many election cycles we have to go through where this is the case. And I'm not saying that Trafalgar's always right. They've gotten things wrong. But my point is that they certainly seem to be trying. And they don't have as many, I haven't seen as many cases with Trafalgar where they obviously have made something up and their numbers are absurd. Nevertheless, though, even though there are some polls that are coming out that I do think are a little more accurate, even if they show Biden up, I'm not saying that a poll to be accurate needs to show Trump ahead. I think that this is a very close race. I'm expecting Trump to, I think that it's possible that Trump does worse than he did in 2016 and still wins. But it's also possible that he does a little better. If he wins, say, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Nevada, I think New Hampshire and Nevada are long shots. Minnesota might be within reach, although not if he has Trafalgar. Trafalgar shows that Trump is down 4 points in Minnesota. But my point is that these dweebs on Twitter and on TV who just look at the RCP average and think that is that's the end all be all of where the race is. Those averages are very clearly skewed even now by ridiculous clown polls. And so the cult of the Nates are going to continue believing that Trump cannot win unless he cheats. And so if Trump does win, there's a very good possibility that Trump does win. He's pretty much already won Florida and North Carolina, and I think Arizona. I mean, actually, the official numbers, the polls, show Trump up more in Arizona than North Carolina and Florida. So it's kind of ironic that I'm less confident in that state, but I don't. So you might say that, well, if the polls are skewed in Biden's favor, and they're not as favorable to Biden in Arizona, then Trump must be definitely safe there. Which I just don't know that I buy that. I don't put that much stock in the polls to think that they are relatively showing which states Trump is doing better or worse in. Because again, they're showing Trump about even in Iowa, and Seltzer has him up 7. But they're also showing him about even in Arizona. Does that mean that he's going to win Arizona by 9 points, just like he won Iowa 9 points? I don't think that is the case. At the end of the day, I think that Trump probably pulls off Arizona by 4 points. Florida, 1.5 to 3 points. I do think that Trump is going to perform better in Florida than he did in 2016, but again, that's always a very you're talking about very small movements in Florida politics, percentage-wise. North Carolina, I think, probably goes to Trump, 3 to 5%, let's say. And who knows? Maybe after the initial backlash, people will start to assess Seltzer's poll and take it kind of seriously, because again, the final Des Moines Register poll of Iowa it's a very high stakes poll. It's not just one poll. The Des Moines Register and Ann Seltzer do not want to be wrong on this, because this is always a big event for them, just like the final Iowa caucus poll going into the caucuses. And so maybe we'll see a late reconsideration by some of the media. Maybe we'll see more people hedging like Nate Cohn is. I think even Wasserman, even though if you push him, he won't do this, but he's implying a bit of a hedge in his thing. If you push him, he'll say, "Oh my God, Trump has no chance." But these people know that they're lying. They know that that's not true, and anyone who wants to preserve their credibility, I think, is incentivized to be a little more truthful this time around, because again, they are the ones who should be blamed if Trump wins, and people do not accept the results of the election, because these people have made it clear that Trump's not going to win. So that's about all I had to say for today. I do think that the tide seems to be turning a little bit in terms of the media. I think that this might go hand in hand. Excuse me. I think this might go hand in hand with the narrative about Trump stealing the election. The paranoia and all this over this. You might have people who are more moderate media voices sort of putting this out there, but half-heartedly saying, okay, sure, Trump has a chance, but then, they know that their audience at this point will not buy that. So, if you gain anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.